because I didn't drink for a long time because I don't really, I really like only do it when I'm with people or something.
Well, there you
Like
go.
when I'm, and so I thought like, it would be kind of nice to have a wine, because it never really happens.
That makes good sense. All right. All right.
I think we should have some awkwardness as well.
It'll happen, right? It's just it's
Right?
built in.
I thought you were like,
Well, it's like when you see my arm doing this, it means I'm like touching something with the interface, basically. It's
yeah,
very weird. It's
yeah,
like a
I
super
figured.
weird foreshortening.
But
Okay,
it's also
sweet.
nice because you can,
You said
yeah.
that you don't normally drink. You said because just with people.
Not so much. No, like when I'm alone, I don't really feel like doing it or something. It's
Hmm.
like I don't know. Maybe just also a defense mechanism against not, wanting to feel like doing it by yourself or something. But no, it's more for me like kind of a social,
Sure,
thing.
yeah. I mean,
And
it's a slippery slope. I definitely, when I
totally,
lived
yeah,
in New York, I definitely drank too much
yeah.
by myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes I also like maybe, but the thing is like, it's weird. It's like it doesn't really taste that great to me either. It never really did. In a way, I feel like I'm kind of stuck in this, still in this kind of childhood sort of taste mechanism or something. The
I mean,
alcohol
that
still
seems like a
kind of,
good defense mechanism in a
yeah,
way. It keeps it at arm's length. There's no like love affair.
yeah, I don't know. But the thing is, I like sometimes, I would want, like now I pretty much stopped completely, but sometimes I would want to smoke a cigarette, and
Hmm.
this stuff together is just like, it's
That's a
married or some shit.
It is. That's definitely a thing, especially like
Mm.
I don't know. It makes me think of my early 20s when it was fun to like go out and
Yeah.
like, so this you're the first person I've talked to who's actually done something for Russell VV back in the day when it put out things. So you did a zine in
Yeah.
2014. Is
Yeah.
that right? It was 2014. It was a while
Yeah.
ago. It's a bunch of years ago.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
And
That's
we
how it
got
is when you
connected
can.
because of Linda.
Yeah.
That which is
Yeah.
crazy. Because I met well I never met her actually. We just like corresponded and
Yeah, I think that's it.
she made a tape and she knew Layla Hekmat. Do you know Layla Hekmat?
I do not very well, but I do know her, like, because like my ex-boyfriend sort of knows her a little better, I guess. Yeah, and there's
We lived together in New York, Layla.
okay,
We shared
okay,
it. We
yeah,
like me and two other people. My girlfriend at the time was her good friend, and then she lived with her boyfriend. And this is a long time ago. It was like 10 years ago. And then she went to grad school and then went to Berlin. Did you
I
guys
didn't
meet?
understand.
Was that like in Berlin?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. I mean, but usually at parties or something. And I went
Mm.
to one of her first like exhibition things at Isabella Bortolozzi's
Hmm.
gallery. Like I think she's in the gallery now or something. I read, like I'm so out of it.
So
Yeah, she's still in Berlin, and she did like some kind of like theater esque performance, uh, opera thing at this gallery, and I looked at that.
that's cool. I was
Yeah, it was pretty weird. I mean, I like she made these fat suits for the opera singers, but I like these, like, I like the ladies in the fat suits. That was kind of a highlight. Yeah,
She was making a lot of garments when I knew her. It was before she went to graduate
yeah,
school, which is like a thing. When she was making my, I was dating a woman named Louise Despont at the time, and they were making garments. And so they were really into making these sort of hand spun looking things. So I always just associate her with like Persian culture and clothing. And so
yeah,
did she make
yeah.
the clothing for the opera singers?
Definitely,
She
yeah.
did. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, that was definitely the case. Yeah. No, no, I was just gonna come back to Linda.
Uh,
Um, because yeah, because I mean, like, I kind of keep in touch with her. I don't know. I saw, like, I just like, from checking out your SoundCloud, I saw that you also, like, actually like that was why I even got I got through to that page, that like the band that she's been doing. Now I knew that she
Yeah,
was
I
making
use her.
music.
Yeah, that she has like a mix cloud of these like long shows. That's like a collaboration. Now I use that at the end of the most recent like
Oh really? I don't
mixtape.
even know that.
We email each other once in a while, and then she'll like send me
Yeah.
something she works on, and I make those long mixtapes just for myself for fun. And
Yeah.
I've always thought her music was ex- extraordinary, and I just use it
Oh
in little bits.
yeah.
Yeah,
She's like one of the greatest voices there is. You know,
yeah.
she's yeah.
I remember
It,
Layla was like, "Oh, you got to check this person," because I was getting into like metal at the time, and
mhm.
and she's like, oh, Layla was in Berlin, and she's like, "Oh, there's this person you need to check out," and she like sent me some video or something, and it was like this tiny little Swedish woman wearing a shirt that said "Fear, drink beer," and she was like
Yeah.
taping up like cardboard. It was a long time ago. It was like 10 years ago, and I was just
Mhm.
like, oh, like there's people who do things like this. It's fantastic.
Mhm.
I felt like such a misfit
Yeah.
in New York. I felt like I didn't find like my people. And I
Yeah.
saw her like doing
That's
stuff. It was,
yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah.
yeah. Did you guys know
It's
each other growing up, or just like after you kind of
um
like left?
no, actually I met her in Berlin,
Okay.
like shortly after I came to Berlin, and she wasn't living there then yet, but I was doing like, there's this friend of mine I was living with, or like, yeah, somebody I had studied with, and she did this kind of, she kind of got me to do like some, I was supposed to play some secretary in some like performance thing or something of hers. I
Mm.
don't, and Linda walked in, and she was like, you know, yeah, as you say, like this, she had like instantly had this like weird sort of like crossover elfish golem kind of like weird
The
shining about
Gollum
her,
thing
and
is
she was like
amazing.
really interested into the stuff that was there, and it's like asking me questions. I was just like, this girl.
Oh
Yeah.
wow,
See,
that's special.
so yeah, totally. And we hung out, and it was a little bit like almost like going on a date or something. Like the first time like went out with her, because I just saw like she was so,
She had like a magnetism.
great. Totally. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. But it was mutual. I felt like we were, yeah. It would be good. I feel always like it's always with her. Like I feel, or maybe that's also about me or something, that whenever we don't talk or something, and it's more like we just write. So whenever it's too virtual, I become like, I start doubting myself and also the other people. I think that's like a general, or like maybe like a disease of the internet in general or something.
I don't think that makes
That
sense.
it's
I
like
mean,
you
especially
can,
now. Jeez Louise.
yeah,
I mean, the work that I
yeah,
do, I'm like sort of a community leader, so to speak. Everything is on Zoom.
yeah,
Everything. Even the worship.
yeah. I was gonna ask about that though. I
Hmm.
wanna like know what exactly you're doing, because I always felt like back then when I did this zine or something, I was like, I think Linda said to me like, yeah, I think he's like Christian, but I'm not really sure. And he's like super he's kind of like, he's very
Yeah.
like ungrabbable in a way. You
I would
can't
talk
really,
through my,
yeah,
yeah, the expressions, I would always talk through my hat when I was
yeah,
communicating with people. Because okay, so here's very quickly the timeline, so to
mhm,
speak. I lived in New York, and I did like the New York thing, because I went to art school and
yeah,
then was painting
yeah,
and
hmm,
working and making it work. And then I was making music, and I was like really frustrated with getting like a record deal, or whatever. So I was like,
oh
screw this.
yeah,
I'm just gonna make
yeah,
my own cassettes. And then I was like, oh, I
yeah,
can like help other people, and it was really fun to like help people make these little
yeah,
releases. I made a
yeah,
tape with Layla, and Layla told me about Linda, and then she and I made a tape. And
yeah,
then I had this sort of all along I'd been interested in philosophy and spirituality. I'd studied Buddhism for a long time.
yeah,
And then
hmm,
I started reading stuff by this French, sort of, it's not really a theologian, but like a French writer named Simone Weil,
yeah,
who was a big deal for me. And she's like super Christian, but from a completely different direction. And it kind of blew my
totally,
mind.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
uh, and I just started like little things. I grew up Lutheran, right? So I'm sure you're familiar with some level of Lutheranism. I just was like, you know what? I was applying for graduate school, and I started for painting, and I was really into Joseph Beuys and like this whole idea of like performance work and objects. And I started making objects about my childhood, and then like the church just sort of popping up, and then I just was like, what if I just
yeah,
did this? What if I just did it? And then I had this kind of vision one day, and I like got really emotional, and it was like this whole thing. And so I secretly applied to divinity school, which is like it's not quite a seminary, not quite graduate school. So I was going to Yale Divinity School. I applied to this one school secretly, didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell my girlfriend at the time. And then I got in, and it was like this big deal. And so I went, no idea what I was doing or what to expect. And I kind of just dived in. But I kept my relationship sort of, at least like email relationship going with Linda. And I didn't want to be like, I'm going to, pastor school, because everybody has justifiable, bias about Christianity, because it's it's wretched in what it has done and sort of the legacy that it has.
Which is why it's good that there's like reformative people in there, So
it's a struggle. I'll be perfectly honest with you. I mean, I've been a pastor, a Lutheran pastor, for almost 2 years, and it's been hard. I just am subversive. There's so many things that I'd like to do and say and express. So I've had to sort of silence lots of parts of myself. So in the process of negotiating those two worlds, it was weird. Like relationships, like, I mean, if you can call it a relationship like ours or whatever, because we were writing to each other and like sending mixes and stuff, I didn't really know what to say. It seemed like I didn't want to alienate people.
Yeah, I filled in that gap sort of in my mind a little bit. I thought that's like, because it's not an easy topic to,
No.
And I also didn't want to, I didn't want to intrude. So I thought like, let's keep it vague, Yeah,
it's tough. The church is a very harmful thing historically, and I wouldn't belong to a particular branch of it that wasn't accepting of like same gender loving people or trans people. Like we are accepting of those things. But it's still tough. It's still by definition sort of a conservative institution.
I have another remark to make. Like I checked out the Rustle VV Instagram thing, and I actually checked it. You probably saw me checking it out because I don't really have an Instagram. I'm using my friend's Instagram. So like, you probably thought it was my friend Alberta, but it was me. What I was going to say is that I really liked this Richard Rohr thing that you posted on there. I hadn't read anything of his, and I did check him out after that, and he's really great.
He's everything. I mean, he's a Roman Catholic. Monk,
he is.
But like, he's everything about what Christianity can be, should be.
Absolutely. And also, I loved what he wrote about white privilege there, and I think it's like, I think there was like in a nutshell really good. Also very interesting about relating that to the addiction principle of control, which I thought is really
so the first thing is a quote about addiction, which he has like an email newsletter, and it's all about different things. So then that is something that's a quote that I had been holding on to, and then the rest of it was me reflecting on whiteness.
Oh really? Okay. I thought it was like all his, because I got confused.
Because I kind of bracketed it with that quote, because I think that the condition of whiteness is an addiction to an unworkable identity. And like as all of the sort of fires burn across the globe, so to speak, like I've realized that like I don't really have an identity. I don't really have like as very much like an American white person. My ancestors all traveled here, and then they made a program of destroying their identity, because any kind of immigrant identity was considered less than white. So like my grandmother's from Italy, straight from Italy, right? But she systematically destroyed her knowledge about how to create wine or tomato sauce or pasta. She hated it. She just erased it. And all of my ancestors have that same story of trying to fit into this sort of category of whiteness in the United States, which leaves me like I don't have anything. So that's what that post is sort of about. It's about like, well, I guess I'm just going to lean into having nothing and have to build it from scratch.
Yeah, I like the principle of having nothing and like having to build from scratch is kind of, it's a very romanticized picture as well, but
that's true. That's dangerous as well.
Yes.
But Richard Rohr is special. He's a special little guy. He's an elderly gentleman now, but the whole like the foundation of his work is contemplative Christianity, which is just based in like a wordlessness, like a meditation essentially. And so he's sort of reclaiming that in the Christian history, and then that's what all of his work is based on, contemplative stuff.
Yeah.
So that's like the taproot of it. And then from that, he'll talk about justice or addiction or these other things, and you find your true identity in your contemplative life. And it's similar to Buddhism. I mean, it's the idea that you kind of lose yourself. But I was looking up Fort Collective a little bit, and it's sort of like you sort of founded this with your friends, and I think was that kind of one of the projects? Was that one of the friends that you had done the Swedish Sisters project with?
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then
It's
they kind of split
it's
off.
the friend whose internet, whose Instagram I'm using.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we founded it in like 2006, basically. I mean, that was the first project we did. Like Alberta, that's this French. We like literally grew up together. We grew up in this kind of like our parents were friends, and we grew up in this kind of like sort of artist commune thing in the city or something. Like, but it was more like it used to be the garbage disposal, not disposal, but where the garbage
like
horses,
the dump?
Weird. Not a dump, but where they would pick up the garbage pickup place in Bremen, but like the old way back in the days, like pre-war, so wow. It was like this leftover place that was kind of beautiful, actually, like a country in the city or something, like a little bit or slice of it. And we grew up there together, and we were like working on this project. It didn't really like this stalking project didn't really like emerge as the like even by thinking of doing an art project or something. It was just a drunken night in a bar where we just got excited over this fucked up idea, and that was why it was so much fun, because it was it didn't make any sense, so it but I think even way back then I got a little more obsessed about it than she, because I was just like, I mean you mentioned that for you Joseph Beuys is like an important figure. For me later on it became more like, maybe contemporaries of him, but more like Robert Fillou or or basically Alan Capper. Is really like, he's American, but he's like one of my like, I guess my artist gurus or something like that, because his whole approach to like the difference between art and life basically not existing, or just like completely taking artworks out of the white cube into just the everyday thing was really inspiring or something. I was like, when we did our first work at Ford, we did this like hotel thing. It was basically, it just started from scratch, because two girls that I'd been studying with, which was Jenny, which is one of the Ford members.
Okay, yep.
And her friend Annelie, they had gotten this building in the harbor of Bremen, and it was like this weird, long building that basically looked like a whale or something. It was built in the 60s, and it was like that kind of architecture that is just kind of berserk. That's just like somebody just thought like, we're gonna make like this kind of spaceship looking kind of weird building, but that is like a customs clearance, like something totally bureaucratic. And they wanted to tear it down, and so they gave it to a bunch of like artists to like do something there before they tear it down. And
oh wow.
So they just had gotten this building, and they invited us over to take a look and like maybe just like talk with them, like what could one do here and whatever. And then we got so excited all together that we were like, it's got to be a hotel. We're gonna build all the rooms. We're gonna like make it like, but more as really like a happening. And then we had 6 weeks to do it, and we ended up being 6 ladies who just like basically worked their asses off for like 6 weeks, and we kind of made it all happen, and had but we were like on the verge of like a mental breakdown, I think, because we had just overdone it so much. So this kind of crazy energy kind of floated into the whole thing. And there was like a bar where only one song would be like on repeat, like a scene that never really like ends or something. And it was all really, I was really enthusiastic after this thing happened. I mean, that I was like, this is the freaking thing. This is like what I want to do. There's like nothing to be gained by it. There's no money in it, whatever. But everyone comes out of it going like, what? This was, this was what happened here. I don't know. It was weird, It was like a real-time movie. Like you step in and you kind of drop out again. Yeah.
And that seems to be a huge part of that sort of the new project, right? These are historical occurrences that you sort of, at least some of them, maybe with like the dancing sickness piece, where it's this sort of unexplainable.
Well, it's very kind of you to say that. But
I know. I think that there's certainly a thematic relation, don't you think?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it's of course, maybe. I mean, but there's a difference in a way that certain things you can only like make happen with the right amount of manpower or woman power, this is the great thing about collective work. And also the stuff, a lot of things, maybe like, some concepts get boiled down by too much opinion having to be in the same pot or something. And then certain radicalism sometimes isn't possible because of that or something, which is the downside. But the upside is that you, like as in a way of this kind of collective experience that is so intense because of all the energy. Like people are so much smarter, like on an emotional level than they consciously think they are or something. So I feel like this is what I mean when like something really, it's accessible all of a sudden to everyone who's there, even though they can't really say in the aftermath what exactly it was or something.
I mean, that's for me, like reading Joseph Boy's essays when he writes about these kinds of things, and he's like, people don't like my work because they want it to be essentially a commodity. And he's like, but that's the whole point is that they experience it. And people, when they experience my work and they don't like it, they want to destroy it because it's asking a lot of them. Like you say that people they have more emotional maturity or intelligence than they think, but that's also demanding. I think that's like why I'll speak for my culture. That's why American people are very put off by work like that, because it's extremely demanding emotionally, and they experience it as demanding, and they shut it off.
Yeah, but also in a way that I really like. There's certain type of art, just like art works that just exist out there in nature, or just like in somebody leaving something in exactly the wrong way by the wayside. And it's just, and that this kind of stuff gets imitated within the white cube all the time. And it just, like, I have sort of a distaste for it when I see it within the white walls, but I really have a big love for it when I see it out there. So it's like kind of and it's basically the only place that I can respect it. It's not even meant to be art. It doesn't even have that approach, and it is nonetheless.
That was what drew me into, like, let's call it community life, right? I was like, this is the truest way to do this. That I like music and I like architecture and I like, these ideas about who God is and stuff. And like, it's all together. And I was also, at the time when I lived in New York, I was obsessed with dilapidated churches. I just constantly took pictures of broken churches. And I loved the institution of the church because I thought it was so broken. I like the decay of it was so beautiful to me. And now that I'm in a decaying institution, that's a totally different story. But that is why I was
to see the other side.
I was so drawn to it, and that's why I wanted to just live it. I was like, you know what? I could go to graduate school for painting, or I can do this crazy thing that nobody's expecting me to do. And like, I don't know if you know the comedian Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, for sure.
I was reading Joseph Boy's, and I was reading his biography, and I was like, I'm just gonna Andy Kaufman this. I'm gonna completely lose myself in the funhouse, and I did. And now I'm insane because I'm in the funhouse, and I can't find my way back out again. Part of it is that I'm new. And I'm a kind of a fool, and I don't know how to truly be myself. and I'm struggling with like the mask of like a minister, and then I have
Of
like my
course,
sort of
yeah.
true self, and I don't know how to reconcile those things because I'm so new. Maybe
Yeah.
in like 10 years I'll be
You'll
more.
find how to do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in the current moment, it is a struggle. It's an unresolved, it's an unresolved
Yeah.
tension. But it's,
And what would happen if you would take off the mask?
I think it would be cruel to so quickly do it. But
Yeah.
I
You gotta
endeavor,
like feed it
yeah, it would be
slowly,
like,
like hit it
I
in.
endeavor to
Yeah.
do it slowly, basically,
Yeah.
or to,
Yeah.
but I
Maybe
don't,
also for yourself. Yeah. But
yeah.
it's a trickery, it's a slippery slope as well,
Mm-hmm.
like because it's like the old sentence, I'm gonna do it slowly, I'm gonna do it.
Institutions are hard because
Yeah.
they're institutions, and so um, they have to go slow because they aren't just like people moving spontaneously who are
Yeah.
like in sync with like the sort of flow. It's a lot of different people, a lot of different views, and then there are like traditions and practices which are done. And in order to incorporate change, you have to like slowly kind of like, I'm using my hands a lot, but you have to like
It's fine.
knit it in a little bit, slow at a time. Otherwise, it gets brittle and it cracks, and you can't. Because like the beautiful thing about the church that I work at is people are really different politically. There's like people who like voted for Trump, and there's people who are
Really.
like super progressive, and they all like
Yeah.
know each other and they sit next to each other. It's like
Yeah.
it's like the story that the news doesn't want you to hear. They think they want to tell you that the culture war is like burning brightly and that these people all hate each other, but here they are. They sit together in church. Well, they don't sit anymore because
Yeah.
they can't come to church, but they,
Yeah.
in theory.
Yeah.
And introducing change really fast, like we've been talking about racism because of the sea change that's happened, and it's causing a lot of like friction because it's too much too fast for them. So,
Okay. Yeah. So you sense that when that happens. Yeah.
but it's,
Wow. That's kind of a sacrifice though, right? I mean, like,
so you talk about sacrifices in the new piece that you're working on as well. Or at least when I asked you to how to sort of summarize it, some of the characters are characters who, I was thinking of the gymnast specifically as someone who's sort of sacrificed to the practice, or I'm wondering like from like
yeah.
I'm
And
gonna
also
just,
just to the system. Yeah. Yeah. I
but
mean, there's this.
my question is like, I'm just gonna assume that you like don't go to church. That seems like a fair assumption, maybe. Like you
You
very much.
know, no, I have no label whatsoever
Right.
on like
Perfect.
account.
Perfect. That's what
Yeah.
that's sort of what I assumed. But what does the word sacrifice mean to you? Like in a Christian sense, it has all kinds of meaning. But like
Right. Yeah.
what's your relationship with that, with the concept?
Um, well, sacrifice, just like in, I think, a very like simple, just that you give something up, uh, like in the thought of something that is more important than that thing, or just like even like an unconscious sacrifice in a way, like Elena Mukina, for example, who's this gymnast who just sacrifices a lot, or like her, basically all of her life, her mobility for this oppressive kind of like male run Russian,
Mm-hmm.
a thing, that I had, they've been just pressuring her into it. And so she's like even too young to realize what she's sacrificing.
There you
But
go.
yeah, just like I'm more like sacrifice in a way of just like, I feel like it's such a weird thing that it's almost like, there's this, I told you I've been spending a lot of times like on mountains in the last like couple of weeks or so. I went to another one of these like sacred mountains of this island, which one of the most sacred ones actually, which and I went there with my brother because he was visiting, and we slept up there. And of course, we there's like this big, there's always like a big gap where you stand, and there's this one little step between life and death that is just it's almost like it's like dragging gap that is there that makes you want to cling to every stone that you're sitting
Mm-hmm.
on or
Mm-hmm.
something,
It has
like it has
gravity
this
to it, like
really,
it's a sort of a
oh
suction, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. or whatever. Like some people like only realize this thing when they look at the 9/11, the moment before the plane gets in. You have this like millisecond that decides that it's just like life, death. There it is, you know. And I don't know. I was just, I mean, I guess this is like one of the basic riddles of humanity, or like every conscious mind or something, to like come to terms with how fast this can happen, or like under which circumstances or whatever. And you know, and in that way, sacrifice means also, it just means the step. Which one is it, you know, like which one?
Very interesting. No, I mean, it makes me think of a biblical story, not to be lame, but
Oh yeah, come on,
the
tell me.
story of
I want some of that because I don't know so much
so
about it.
the story of Abraham and Isaac. So Abraham
Yeah,
is his name in Hebrew means the ancestors of many. It's like, you know,
yeah,
it's an ancestor story. Abraham is supposed to be the father of all of Israel. And so you
yeah.
have these sort of old legends, these family stories about Abraham. And so Abraham is super old, and God says, "Hey, Abraham, come here. I'm going to talk to you for a second." And he says, "You're going to be the father of the whole world." And Abraham is old, and his wife is old, and says, "That's impossible." And God's like, "It's going to happen. I promise." Um, and so, fast forward a bunch of years, Abraham's finally got his son, who's called Isaac, and
Yeah.
and then God says, "Hey, Abraham, come here. I want to talk to you." And he says, "I want you to go up to the top of the mountain. I want you to kill your son Isaac in a sacrifice."
Right. Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
Abraham goes, and it's really dramatic in the Bible. It's Abraham goes. It's like Abraham says, "Okay," and just does it.
Yeah.
'Cause he's like pure obedience. But this
Yeah.
Isaac represents the promise of God.
Yeah.
That the whole point, the whole freaking, you know, the whole thrust of Scripture is that. And then Abraham just sort of goes, and then he's about to kill. He's at the line that you're talking about. He's about to
Yeah.
kill Isaac and cut his throat, and an angel intercedes and says, "No, no, no, don't do it. Just kidding. Because you didn't withhold your son from God is you're blessed from now on because you've always sort of
Okay.
but it's this
enough.
yeah, but
Yeah.
there's, you know, Kierkegaard and these other sort of later theologians are like horrified by this because they're like, why would God ask
Sure.
Abraham to commit this sacrifice? It's so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Why? But that's like this sort of, it's the knife's edge that you're talking about, and sort of
Yeah.
the hand of the angel takes the knife away, pulls him back from the edge. But it's.
I don't know. I'm also a little bit uncertain about that decision there, but
It's
that
very,
demand.
it's extremely troubling. No, it's supposed to be
Yes.
horrifying. I think that's.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the yeah, I guess it's very personal in a way, but I mean, I feel like I've been in this like in a very like blinded way. I've been riding this edge for a long time, or like for at least like about, I don't know, 7 or 10 years or something like that. Yeah, because it's such a, like, I don't know, it's such a logic question somehow. I don't know. It just came, I just couldn't, I don't know, especially when you have something like the monkey brain of a human and all the ego problems that come with it. And, you know, and also, like, you know, basically, I think what a lot of times, like the pushing force behind that is also, it's just the failure that you feel you are doing or something, or just like or just even the definition of failure that is supposed to be, you know, whatever the status that you still hang on to, or whatever, you know, all these things that make you feel incredibly small all the time, you know, and but you still can't let them go or something. And then you create this kind of persona that is so high above it, that it's just like, you know, I could just, you know, it doesn't even matter. I know, like, this is also like whatever, Camus and all these like wonderfully literate philosophers that were like, I feel like I smell ego in so many lines there, you know.
Absolutely.
It's like this, the nihilism itself is like kind of a
I think it's an escape, and it's funny
it
because
is, and it's also true. It's both. It's like kind of,
but there's
you know,
subtlety.
just like,
There's subtlety in it because Simone Weil used to hang out with Camus. Camus was really good friends with Simone Weil's parents, apparently. And they were like,
Yeah.
had wine at the cafes in Paris or whatever the hell they did.
Oh,
And,
I'm sure.
and but Simone Weil is essentially, I mean, you could look at it this way. She's not a nihilist, but you could say she is because for her, God is nothingness. And like,
Yeah.
she annihilated herself. She starved to death. I don't know if you like know a lot about her,
Oh, I
but
didn't know that about her. Right.
and she suffered from like severe migraines, and she also just refused to eat and sleep in solidarity with people who are in Paris under the occupied forces or whatever. And then she just got worse and worse. But her prayers at the end were that she would become nothing, that she would become stuff, because for her, like that's what Christ did. Christ died and then became communion, basically. And so she was very Roman Catholic influenced, and she got what she wanted, you know. So you could call that nihilistic suicide, but for her, she turned like what Camus couldn't stomach and had to sort of rail against. She turned it into like pure spirituality and pure union. So that's why when I read sort of those male European writers of the mid-century, I agree. I can't stomach it. I feel that they're losing the point.
Well, I have to say both, because there's like also a lot of, as with almost every, philosopher, there's a lot of truth. And then there's also the limitation of it, like at the same time, which is also natural, I guess,
Yeah. No,
it's
you're
also
right, because
it's also sometimes kind of nice. It's just like dull moments or something. Sometimes you see somebody you admire or something have a dull moment and you're like happy, actually. You're like, oh, okay. It's
well,
nice. He's also
that's
just a
very insightful,
vagabond.
right? Because I would never recommend to, I mean, when I talk sometimes to young adults who go to the church, I will recommend they
Yeah.
read Simone Weil, and they'll read it and be like, this is interesting, but they're like, this is not a workable solution. And then the answer is no. You're not going to tell
Yeah.
anybody to starve to death at age 34. So she's as unworkable as the others. I think you're right.
Getting back to the personal part of that, it's like I feel like I did this for a very long time, like just to to cling to a certain type of idealism that grew out of basically the fear of not being able to manage normal life or something, or just like not ever being able to like really relate or like fit in or something, whatever, like very normal feels that you can relate to, everyone has or something, but still whatever your ego kind of turns that into is like the really destructive part. And then you still like even feel glorious while you're being destructive, like kind of. And weirdly enough, it takes only like it has to be like in a moment of feeling better out of like very like banal reasons already, like maybe it's just like being on an island or some shit,
I mean,
like
but
to even realize that this is what you've been doing all this time, like to like, to just even be able to come to terms with your own not unspecialness isn't a word, with the fact that you're what you're like, that you're probably never going to be famous and all this like stupid stuff that nobody wants to admit that they like think about or something. Understanding that it doesn't even really mean anything is something you logically can always say from a point of privilege. That's it. You always say like, yeah, sure. Like I said that all the time when I still had like an art career. I would say, like, it doesn't matter.
Like, it doesn't matter. No, that's so real. And like the narrative which you're describing is the one which still sort of tortures me, which is like I'm a nothing. I'm an anonymous priest, pastor.
Yeah.
And I'm completely meaningless. I mean, the good that I do, I will never know what I do. I'm not in the business of doing evil, obviously. Like I'm trying to like serve people and bury them and marry them and do these kinds of things. It's not bad, but it's
bury them and marry them.
I mean, that's a joke. The power to bury and marry.
Yeah.
But it's very mediocre. It's just ordinary.
Yes, of course. I feel like almost everyone understands it. And it doesn't even, and that's also like the funniest part of it. It doesn't even matter what you've achieved because you're
Yeah.
still gonna run it. It's like, it's kind of, even if you compensated or something like happened and you're like really a big shot or something, this that the small part does not go away from that
Yeah.
either. It's like I really like what the only thing like I can say about it is that I've really I spent years on end like feeling alienated basically from a lot of people or like humanity in general, which was part of my weird kind of like idealization of certain things and total banning of others. So there
Uh,
was a lot of a lot of resilience and hate also. But so
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm
uh,
hearing a lot of
yeah,
myself in what you're saying. Have you ever heard of the Enneagram?
the what?
It,
No, I
it's a
have
kind of an
not.
ancient spiritual sort of personality diagram. It's really old. It was started by like Persians, and they used to use it in Christian monasteries in like the Middle Ages to like organize people. And
Yes.
Richard Rohr is very into it. So there you go.
So what exactly is it? Tell me, like,
It's like a more it's like a better version of the zodiac because you don't it's not you're not chosen by the stars. You just read the descriptions and then you choose the one which makes you the most uncomfortable.
oh,
It's like
that's interesting. Choosing something that makes you the most uncomfortable, and then it's you, or what?
it's
Like,
you, but it's also, I mean, the idea of the Enneagram is that you learn your type, and then you learn what makes you healthy, what makes you unhealthy. You learn all these different things,
uh-huh.
and then the true point of it is to realize that it's all just meaningless, and that you're just who you are.
Whatever.
But it gives you it. But the
Okay.
point is that it sucks you in the beginning because it tells you who you are.
Okay.
And like your kind of ego, false self is like, ooh, I'm gonna like look in the mirror and know who I am. But like the teaching
Yeah.
of it is to teach you that it's like a little bit, it teaches you how to get over these things. But you just remind me of myself
Okay.
so much that you might read the description of the four on the Enneagram.
Before.
Yeah, so it's 1 through 9,
Uh-huh.
and they're just numbers, and they have different
Okay.
like subtle traits. And the four on the Enneagram
Okay.
is it's traditionally the artist, and but what
Okay.
um, it's just what you're saying, these running these narratives of failure, of being ordinary and not making it, and
Yeah.
but also this idea that struggling with the idea that like I am special, I'm nobody, and then I'm special, but
Yeah.
it didn't work out for me, so I must be terrible, and then like having all these like sort of fantasies and inner worlds, like complex inner worlds, both negative and positive. These are sort of like traits of the four on
Yeah.
the Enneagram.
Absolutely. And then also like I mean I think maybe it's also time we start talking about the internet a little bit. you know, it's like it's because it is this it's like I don't know. I mean I've just basically observed myself within like the last 10 years or something, and I must say it's it's such a drug, I mean
Mm,
everyone knows this anyways, but it's like especially for this kind of like or for this kind of like feeling of smallness that a lot of people have, and
sure.
it's like it's just like creating this separate bubble where you are somehow more than you are, and you
Hmm.
don't like, and you can perfectly maneuver around ever like showing that thing too much, and
Yes.
just
Yeah.
like kind of being like always, but you also always feel like a con artist or something, because you're like kind of pretending like, you're not really, like
Yeah,
you're
absolutely.
maneuvering around the smallness. So it's like, I don't know. I'd like, this is actually, to be perfectly honest, this talk is one of my like decisions that I made to like, okay, also just to like cut cut off the internet, whatever projection sheet that I have also created somehow. It, but it is the master drug, like,
Absolutely, it
this
is.
kind of stuff is, I even like, I mean, I trick myself sometimes by just like, I have this mobile router and I just hide it somewhere. I just like basically like leave it somewhere so I can't use it for a week, you know, and it's just like some freaking addiction, you
Yeah.
know. It's the first days is super restless, and I kind of
Yes.
like bored as, you know, bored as and then and then and then after a while, like this weird kind of like energy comes back that feels like, you know, just like some kind of like abandon or something, I don't know. And then you start feeling better again and more inspired and stuff, and I start doing stuff again, and then like comes the classic point where like, oh, I feel kind of good, I might as well take a look, you know, like I want to know what's going on. And it's like back to, you
Yeah.
know.
No, it makes
Yeah,
sense. It makes total sense. I have the same cyclical thing. I'll have an Instagram account or whatever it is, and
yeah,
I'll
yeah,
build it up and then I'll delete it.
for sure, yeah,
Which does
yeah.
exactly prove your point that it has an addictive.
Absolutely, yeah. It is everything. It's just I don't think it's like our monkey brains are done, like made for it or something. It's just too much. It's too much. You have everything all the time. It's like nobody can handle that. It's like one of like, also because I mean we talked about, you know, like fatherhood and all this kind of like, you know, like via email and stuff. Uh, that's like one of my the presence of the internet, or like us, I don't know how old you are, but I think you're probably my age, the last generation that even like remembers
Yes. It not
times
been,
before
yeah,
the
not being it.
internet.
I remember very clearly it
Yeah,
not being there.
yeah,
And when it
yeah,
was there, it was so incredibly primitive that, you know, the claws weren't
yeah,
so deep. You remember you would wait hours for like an MP3 to download.
right,
And
yeah,
but now it's
yeah,
instantaneous. I get like super pissed when I like, you know, my uploading speeds aren't like what I think they should be.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Part of it is
yeah,
now during a pandemic. That's what this project is trying to do. Is trying to like get the internet to do what it was supposed to do, which is connect people and
yeah,
bridge
right.
gaps. And so, you know,
Yeah, and I mean that's true. It does that sometimes if you use it that way, for sure.
but
It's just that your brain isn't really like made to be that smart, you know. It's just like, yeah, 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 yeah. I know. I have no solution whatsoever, and I am also absolutely hooked on it. And just I don't know. Like I also I don't even think that there's like, I mean you would be basically Amish or something if you would like create a group that would be like the offliners or some
yeah, no, and it
like,
doesn't. It becomes
like
its own idol too to denigrate it. I
exactly.
think
Yeah,
that
yeah,
this
yeah.
like the
Uh-huh.
difficult thing to do is to set boundaries and follow them,
Mm-hmm.
which is so like
Mm-hmm.
mature. It takes so much work and to create boundaries, at least for me, in any places in my life. You know, when it comes to
Yeah.
my work life or my personal life, or like, you know, I'm not gonna have
Yeah.
3 beers tonight. I'm gonna have one, and I'm not gonna
Yeah.
look at Instagram for 5 hours. I'm gonna look at it for 20 minutes. I
Yeah.
think that's tough.
I mean, it's basically also right now, particularly because you're like every day you're basically looking at the horror show every day. You know, it's like
It is an
and it's also, it
unfolding.
feels like it's necessary. You got to do it. You cannot, you know, you cannot. But then also like even like when I'm just on the mountain for one night or something, it just feels like um yeah, like uh,
No, I
it
hear what you're
feels
saying,
really
and
good. I also feel like such a, like, I don't know, I feel like a lot of this, like what's happening right now is also like you do see that there is also like, you know, everyone trying to be correct, you know, like, and trying to do
that
the right
is,
thing.
yeah,
And then some people making fun of that, although I think that's like also bullshit, because it's good that everyone's like trying to do
yeah,
the right thing, because that like gives it momentum at least, you know, like, and the more probably like talk about it and go like, oh, I should be like a correct person on my Instagram feed, you know.
right,
It's
exactly.
like it's good, it's good for the thing, you know. But I don't know, I'm really curious to see what happens next, or what's gonna happen, you know. But I
It's
hope, I don't know.
give me
Mm-hmm.
just like a final kind of thought,
Yeah,
and then I'm
a,
gonna
a, a final thought.
a final thought.
Okay, okay. Ooh, such a big gong. I feel like I'm on the stage all of a sudden. No, God damn it, I'm not going to be able to give you like a good
All right,
thought, you know.
I can prompt you. So like, I'm just curious about your relationship with the guitar.
Oh, my relationship with the guitar, that's pretty easy to answer. It's basically that I'm a total rookie at it, basically. Well, I don't know. I feel like the relationship with anything that I have that is like worthy of hearing or looking at or whatever is always in the moment where I forget my relationship with it or something, or where like where I'm actually listening. I mean, it's like, I don't know. I maybe that's like another too much of a cross reference, but I read this thing of Pauline Oliveros. She's this like kind of meditative accordion player, and she wrote something on quantum listening. And I've been like listening to this one piece of hers here kind of repeatedly. It's called Rattlesnake Mountain. And it's because it sounds particularly great with there's these birds outside on the mountain. They're called padillas, and they every night they come out and they do like this kind of goofy demon sound, sort of. I think they're called, I forgot what they're called in English. They're like these, like they look like seagulls, but they're bigger. And these two songs together, just like they're kind of like they really work very well. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm getting around the question, but
I asked you about guitars. You're talking about accordions and birds.
Yes, exactly. But this is the thing that I feel so caught up in myself, and like most of the times I feel really small, and it's just like that I'm totally unable, basically, you know, that I'm just like I have to basically constantly compensate my inability to actually play the guitar, because for some reasons I have some kind of like I guess fear of really learning it or something. I don't know what it is, but it's like I feel like I don't know what it is. I don't really understand myself completely there, but it's like you can only, it's a little bit the same with whatever the photography I do or something. I was never interested in the technical aspects of it at all. You know, it was always like I want to know as little as possible about that and all. So just like out of maybe like some kind of purist, maybe like a wrong kind of purist idea that only then would I be able to like listen properly, or just to like feel the new in every sound or something like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's sounding way bigger than music.
But I hear what you're saying though. It's like you're in a sweet spot of unknowing that you like what you make, the sounds and the melodies you make you like, and you don't want to know too much, because then you start to question like, does this chord go with this chord, and does this thing do this, and what? There's like
I didn't want to be in the problematic position of the control and of like being